welcome back to The Road to Episode 9, my ongoing series where I chart the road to the release of Star Wars Episode 9 in December 2019. And in this video I want to address the rumor, kind of source thing that has popped up all over the internet over the past 24 hours, and that is that apparently a source has confirmed that Disney, aka Lucasfilm, one and the same, have put a hold to all future Star Wars spin-off movies. They've decided no more Boba Fett movie, no more Yoda movie, no more Kenobi movie, we're throwing them all out. Wookiees and Ewoks living together, mass hysteria. You know, Disney are in deep trouble. Yeah. Thing is, they never really announced any of those films. That's my take on it. My take is that, you know, they never said, hey, we're doing a Kenobi movie. Hey, we're doing a Boba Fett movie. The whole James Mangold directing Boba Fett was just a rumor. You know, it seemed like it was coming from reliable, you know, reputable sources. Reputable? Is that even a... Regardless, you know, it was coming from sources that seemed to be, you know, predicting the right things in the past. But, you know, it was only ever that. A rumor or a source said this. So in this case, it just seems to me that people are kind of overreacting, like, oh, they're in big trouble, oh, they don't know what they're doing next. It's like, well, yeah, they're doing episode 9, you know, they're filming soon. That's what this whole series is, The Road to Episode 9, and on that note, they will be starting to go into production for Star Wars Episode 9. But this video is about the spin-offs and the ramifications of them being put on hold. Now, for one thing, I could see it, I could very easily believe that the spin-off movies, the standalone movies, the Star Wars stories have been put on hold because Solo didn't do very well compared to the other films, comparatively speaking. You know, you're looking at movies that made over 2 billion worldwide, over 1 billion worldwide. And then now we have a film that's done, I think, 300, 400 million worldwide, and they put so much money into Solo because they had to reshoot a large portion of the film. So they lost money on it big time. But it wasn't, I don't think it's a case where it's really put them in that much financial trouble. Of course it isn't, but it's something that they looked at and thought, okay, maybe we need to reassess this. Which is the way any business should work, and after all, it's show business, right? You know, Disney, you know, the corporate heads, they want to make money. They want to get a return investment on what they put into buying the whole property to begin with back in 2012. And when they see, you know, 2 billion, 1 billion, 1 billion, then, oh, 300 million, like, there's quite a jump there, and they need to assess why this has happened and how they can save money moving forward in the future. If they were to just be like, oh, okay, well, it doesn't matter, we'll just pour another 200 million into a, you know, into another 6 films, then they're making a stupid decision. For me personally, I think that the reason Solo didn't do too well with the box office is a multitude of reasons. You know, there's the boycotts. You know, the people who hated The Last Jedi said they're done with Star Wars, they're boycotting this Kathleen Kennedy feminazi agenda, this social justice warrior, you know, plague that's infected Star Wars, and they're going to boycott the film, they're not going to go and see it. Yeah, that had no dent whatsoever. Anyone who actually did that are just petty and, you know, really made no difference on the overall gross of the film whatsoever, in my opinion. And maybe a tiny, you know, just absolute minuscule dent, but one that really has been noticed by no one. What really hurt the film, I think, was that it came out 5 months after The Last Jedi. You know, we've been conditioned over the past, like, 2, 3, 4 decades, not that I've been around that long, but, you know, Star Wars fans as a whole have been conditioned for at least decades to know that Star Wars films don't come out very often. Every 3 years was always the benchmark when the trilogies, the original and the prequel, were in production. But now the sequel trilogy started and the Disney era started, we're now conditioned to a movie every December, or at least every year. Now we jump to Solo and it's 5 months afterwards, it's very soon. There's a lot of casual members of the public who weren't even aware that there was a new Star Wars movie coming out. The marketing, in that sense, had to have been an issue. But also the time that it was released. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking putting Solo on at the point of the year that it was, because, you know, you're looking at Black Panther in February, which, to be fair, was one that I don't think a lot of people were really expecting to be as big as it was. huge billion-plus worldwide gross, you know, massive sensation hits. Then moving from there, you know, we had things like Ready Player One, but then April it started kicking up into high gear again. We had Avengers Infinity War, another film that's now crossed the 2 billion mark, had become one of the most successful films of all time, beating The Force Awakens, and then right after that we had Deadpool 2, and then like a week later, Solo. You know, Deadpool 2, Avengers Infinity War, there's so much more riding on that as far as a fan anticipation, whereas Solo is something that's kind of untested waters. It's a character that we know and love, but it's played by someone else and it's going back, it's a prequel. There's not as much as, oh, we're going to get more of that other stuff that we love, because it's different and it's new, and so there's not that built-in kind of audience that's going to be there opening weekend and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So the timing of it was an issue. Apparently Memorial Day weekend is always a bit patchy as far as, you know, releasing movies and the box office results because of that. So I think there was a lot of factors, but I think it would have been in their best interest to save it until December, even if it would cast some doubt over, oh, you know, they're in trouble again. And it's really interesting, you know, how loads of films that are this scale, this size, have reshoots and things like that, and then as soon as Rogue One had reshoots, it was, oh my god, they're in trouble. And to be fair, they clearly were in trouble with Solo, because they fired the directors 3 or 4 months into production. So they need to look at that. They need to look at who they're hiring and if they're really truly happy with them, because clearly that was not the right fit and a mistake was made there. So, you know, for me, am I gutted that, oh, there's not going to be a Boba Fett movie in a few years? Not really. Am I disappointed that a Kenobi movie isn't a dead cert now? Not really. You know, if anything, I'm kind of happy that this might put kind of a stop to some of the more ridiculous ideas, which, again, are pure speculation and, you know, just people kind of drumming up stuff, I suppose, online. But if they were to ever really consider a young Princess Leia movie, you know, people, oh, Millie Bobby Brown, get Princess Leia, and it's like, where's that movie? You know, what is she doing? You know, teeny bopper politics, you know, and oh, young Luke Skywalker movie, get Jacob Tremblay to do it, and it's like, Luke, moisture farming for 2 hours? Like, I don't get the appeal of it. With Han, I can see it because he has this kind of rough upbringing and adventures that happened beforehand, but with Luke, his adventure starts with A New Hope. Leia, you could argue there's probably some stuff that went down before, but I think that they really need to invest in things that are a little bit different and moving forward, and, you know, not relying so much on, you know, the kind of the past goodwill of established characters. As much as I loved Solo, I didn't expect it at all. I was expecting to be really disappointed with it and kind of just thinking it was pointless. Now, do I feel like Rogue One and Solo are vital elements of the whole Star Wars story that needed to be told, and I feel like everything's so much better because of it? No. I feel like those two movies, as much as I love them, unexpectedly, they're not essential. You know, they do kind of fill in some of the gaps of the story, and I do actually feel like Solo, for me, made me like Han as a character even more. So in that sense, it has actually done something positive and actually expanded on the mythology, but I don't feel like I really needed it. So it seems like they need to kind of focus now on Episode 9, making that the best possible movie they can. From this source and this rumour, there is no change to the Rian Johnson trilogy, and I think the Game of Thrones creators who are doing something as well in the movie arena, it seems. So it's just these kind of standalone spin-off movies that are kind of one-and-dones that they're putting the brakes on. Apparently, again, allegedly, again, movies that have never been announced to begin with. So you've got to take these things with a grain of salt, I think, but just talking about it theoretically and so on, assessing Solo as I would say, a commercial failure, I suppose. And it's always weird when a movie makes hundreds of millions of dollars and it's seen as a failure, but you have to judge it on a case-by-case basis. You know, The Last Jedi didn't make anywhere near as much money as The Force Awakens. A lot of people said it was a commercial failure. It wasn't. It made over $1 billion worldwide. It made a shit ton of money, just not as much as The Force Awakens. It wasn't a failure. As far as Solo's concerned, considering the fact that they reshot a lot of the movie and the marketing and all that, I'm sure that, yeah, that was a failure commercially for them. Money was not lining the pockets of Disney from Solo. But, you know, there's so many elements at play and you can never really know all the facts. But, you know, I'm sure they'll figure it out. I'm sure that they'll figure out a good way to get back to those films if they really want to make them. I'd love to see. I think the Kenobi one is probably the best bet, because I think there's a lot of goodwill for the prequels that has kind of grown over the past 10 years, I feel like. Prequel era, it was kind of like an uncool thing to love. Now that you know, so many people are against the Disney era, that the prequels are now seen as this cherished thing, but also the huge popularity of memes in the prequel trilogy, specifically Revenge of the Sith, and specifically, well, not specifically, I'd say more specifically the Emperor, but Obi-Wan is a big part of that kind of thing. So I think based on that purely, which sounds really silly to say that memes would help this, but I do think that so many people would love to go and see a Kenobi movie with Ewan McGregor again, to kind of relive that a little bit, but also to, you know, just to live with that character a bit more, because he was so great at what he did, and probably along with the Emperor, played by Ian McDiarmid, the most successful element of the prequels, I think, was Ewan McGregor's performance as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anyway, as it stands, you know, the Rian Johnson trilogy is still slated to go ahead. A lot of people were wondering, you know, with the Last Jedi, you know, the fan backlash, are they're gonna kick Rian Johnson out? Look, I recently rewatched the hour-and-a-half documentary on the making of The Last Jedi, the director and the Jedi. You can tell Kathleen Kennedy loves Rian Johnson, and she loved working with him. I think she said something to the effect of, "I've never had an experience like this making a movie." You know, she loved working with him and his producer partner, Ram Bergman, who has come out, I think, recently and said, "It's definitely happening. We're doing this trilogy. You know, that they're working on it, so it's going to happen." And I'm excited for that, very much so, knowing how good of a filmmaker and storyteller he is, in my opinion, and you know, having something wildly and you know, completely different and new. And I've said it before, I think that the Solo film was so important to the series, because it was the first Star Wars film to show you that you can do a Star Wars movie that works, that doesn't have the whole galaxy's fate at stake, and it's just a kind of pulpy action adventure sci-fi fantasy. And that's something that, I don't know, maybe Rian Johnson's trilogy is going to be grand and sweeping and epic and operatic and deal with the Force and all that kind of stuff and be mystical. But, and be with the fate of the galaxy. Who knows where he's going to set it, what kind of story he's going to tell. But, you know, I think that it is important to see that we can have those Star Wars films that will be successful and enjoyable and worth our time, that, you know, are just light fun. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the supposed cancellation of all future spin-off movies. I can't say they were ever the most exciting element for me. I can tell you this right now, if Star Wars Episode 9 was the last Star Wars film for like 5 or 10 years, totally fine with that, absolutely fine with that. I'm so excited just to see the conclusion of this story and these characters, and, you know, potentially the conclusion to the Skywalker story as a whole. If you were to say to me that Star Wars Episode 9 would be the last Star Wars movie ever, and they'll never go back to it, I'd be fine with it. We know that's not the case, we know that's never going to happen, and as Solo showed me, even if I'm not kind of like really excited for a Star Wars movie, I'm still going to love that world, and I'm still going to be excited to see whatever they decide to make and whatever stories they decide to tell. So whether they pause these movies for 10 years, whether they get back to them in the next couple, I'll be sat here and I'll be waiting to watch them and enjoy them with the rest of Star Wars fans who just like to enjoy stuff. So there we go, that's my thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.